Good morning. Commissioner Johnson, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you, yes.
Let's test your microphone.
Testing, 1, 2, test. Testing.
There we go. Now we can hear you.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right.
Sorry, Jody.
You can see her. Okay, I will call to order the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal session for March 28th, 2024. It is 10:01 in the morning. And if everyone could stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's Killian. He's been trying to bust into the office for like half an hour now.
Hi. All right. Item C is our calendar session. Is there anything to add to calendar? I know I sent an email yesterday about MWACT is April 4th at 3:30, but I think only Kit attends that. And then we have some AOC meetings on Friday, April 5th, starting at 9 o'clock. Anything else to add? Okay. Item D is public comment. This time period is reserved for public comment on any topic other than an agenda item, a quasi-judicial land use matter, or a topic scheduled for a public hearing. I don't believe we received any written comment today, but if anyone is here in the audience to provide general public comment, or if you're online, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, hearing none, we will move forward to department updates. There's nothing today. Item F is our work session. And today we have review and discussion of county communication strategy and the PIO discussion. So commissioners, this is something that we added when we were kind of going through and penciling out our work sessions for the year. And I think, originally we had talked about communication or PIO function as being part of another deputy position. So that person would have sort of a dual function, or maybe half time would be devoted to external communication, which we haven't really had an official position. And through COVID, I think we saw a significant need for that. And it's just sort of been building from there. So Ken, I don't know if you had anything sort of structured for the conversation, but
I don't know.
Okay.
I wasn't sure what the board, because like you were saying, we had that discussion previously where I brought forward some suggested organizational ways to address that need. But if, so I'm listening.
Okay. I mean, my thoughts are really the same as I expressed in the past, which is I think we need somebody to be managing external communication, coordinating messages between our departments. So a lot of our departments have their own ways of communicating to the public, which is fine and great. But we don't really have, when it comes to policy, we don't really have somebody bringing it all together. Informing and educating the public on board policies and county programs and services. That's really not being done on a regular basis in terms of what policies the board is setting. And then obviously issuing press releases, when things come up, emergencies come up, we don't really have a formal function for that. Responding to media inquiries, on behalf of the board so that people aren't reaching out to us individually per se, if that's not appropriate. And, you know, potentially assisting the chair. So every year when we do budgets, the chair has to sort of produce the budget message, maybe helping the budget chair or the chair of the commission do that. Coordinating the state of the county message. That's something that most other counties do. We haven't done one in a while, if ever. And I think one of the key pieces for me is really social media platforms and managing the board's social media platforms. A lot of these issues are coming forward and being litigated almost, and the Supreme Court has been weighing in on a lot of these issues with social media and elected officials. And I think it would be beneficial for us to have someone who is managing, you know, social media platforms for the board in a non-political way and in a way that is only focused on policy. I think it's good for the county. It's good for the residents here. It's also good for us individually as commissioners. So those are kind of some of my thoughts on what's needed. But I do think that's something that, you know, a deputy administrator could do in sort of a halftime role.
I agree with that. I think about how difficult it was during the labor negotiations where there was so much movement, so many different changes. And the impetus was on Ken to not only, you know, be in bargaining all day and deal with the regular duties of a county administrator, but then to try to put together a comprehensive press release that was measured and careful, knowing that we were in active negotiations. And I think that is really difficult because those communications are very labor intensive and they're critical. And it's very important that we not have that dumped on someone who's also trying to do two other people's jobs, which is what our administrator is now in the position of being asked to do. So I see that someone who is not only conversant with everything going on in the county, as our administrator is, knows what's going on in all the departments, knows what some of the internal issues are, someone who knows that to a degree and can communicate that out, because we know that HHS has a robust and has a system in place to be able to send out press releases when there are issues regarding public health. For instance, the sheriff's office is very good about communicating things like that, but we don't have any comprehensive one-stop shop for that. I think it would be good. And also, when people are looking to local media for the news or information about particular policy changes or board actions, I think it's been demonstrated that the information they're receiving is not only not accurate, but it's misinformation. So I want to make sure we're offering people the ability to get the facts. As you mentioned, it's not political. So in other words, when we do Facebook posts, social media posts, it's coming from the perspective of an individual commissioner. We're going to have different perspectives, and we're going to have our detractors and our supporters on that thread. And it goes back and forth and it becomes toxic and none of the information really winds up getting communicated. So if we used to have a Facebook page years ago. Remember, Ken, we had a commissioner's Facebook page, but it was such a mess because it was like Commissioner Primizic and I were the only ones that were posting. And then it was like, well, how do we do this in an apolitical way? And then so we just all stopped.
Yeah. And I think that's, you know, the decisions coming out of the Supreme Court are pretty clear in terms of you need to be separating policy and work that's being done on behalf of constituents with sort of your political or personal page. And it's really just to protect everyone and make sure that the line of communication can stay open with, you know, the official pages. So it's a great idea. It's one that when Colton was here, we actually had a discussion about too, and he recommended that as well. So I just think these are, in my view, these are sort of basic functions of a county. It's something that's necessary to be looking at, and social media is is a very prominent form of receiving information, right or wrong. So we have to sort of exist in that space. Commissioner Johnston, any thoughts on how we roll some of this out?
I agree. Is there like is the vision of this as one point person that would still go back to a sheriff's department, whatever, and just confirm that the information is correct? And then that one person still, because like Ken, so during negotiations, Ken knew exactly and precisely what was going on as far as to write a news release. So is this other position going to write that and then still send it to Ken, be like, here's what I written. You want to verify this? This is good. And it saves Ken that time from having to do it. And now he's just checking off on it. And then it goes back to get posted to whatever, whether it's Facebook or is that how we kind of see this going down? Because otherwise now we're relying on somebody to know the sheriff's department, to know labor negotiations, to know all those different aspects. And also to take it to the next level, if you go from sheriff's department to admin or what Ken's got going on, now are you going into HHS? Now are we going into Parks and Rec? Are we going into all those Facebook pages and funneling them down to one that is Yamhill County?
I can answer that because I think right now we haven't necessarily had a central resource for the county, and in particular for items, you know, because the sheriff's office, they have a designated PIO.
Yep.
The DA's office, they also, you know, and those are pretty specific to matters that come before them. And then HHS has that, I'm thinking in particular with public health in particular. So we've done a really good job at the department level. It's one of those that we have a lot of musicians in the orchestra that, you know, not a central conductor that's kind of helping to, and I think whether it's you know, sometimes it's workload issue, sometimes it's topic, sometimes we just have a lot of people that are feeding stuff into the website, you know, because again, the county website is probably our primary tool that we have for news updates, accessing records. We just rolled out the new website. We're still working on the mechanics on how we're getting things updated and the flow of information that gets in there. So sometimes it can be a little bit challenging because again, you have a lot of information and updates and posts that are coming in to the website and trying to get that posted. So we try to do our best to get that. I think for the most part, just like the way Commissioner Starrett was describing the Facebook account, which I believe is still active, it was just something that we were no longer getting things to kind of post to that or to use that. And you know, the struggles of managing social media, because which platform, you know, or is it all the various platforms that you need to kind of be on when it comes to that? And so that's been kind of set off to the side, and most of our energies is focused on the website itself and getting information posted. So I think that's been kind of the struggle, you know, like for labor negotiations. Yes, I was doing and I was also working with the bargaining team, but I was drafting the initial drafts and getting the circulated. You know, there's other matters I would love to be able to put more press releases together, but honestly, just time constraints limit our ability. So. But I do see the new website as being a lot more user friendly. And again, we're still learning the new platform and trying to get information posted to that. But I do think we have the tools in place where it's just working on the refining and again, you know, if the board wants to see more of a presence on social media as well as getting information out there, that is a gap that's not being addressed right now.
Yeah, I don't, Commissioner Johnston, I don't foresee this person replacing any individual department's media work. I think it's important that they continue to do that. I think that we are missing, the gap is, like Ken said, we're missing the weekly policy. We discuss and vote on a lot of different policy every single week. We're missing that piece where that is sort of collectively being put out to the public in a way to inform and educate, not in a political way in any sense, but just inform and educate. So, and then when we do have these emergencies come up, you know, somebody to assist Ken and Christian. But the very nature of the position would be somebody who has to be either here or watching the board meetings, you know, similar to what Ken does. So, but I don't see that being any different than what a deputy administrator would do if that's who it's going to be.
I don't see it as a full-time position. I think under any circumstances, even with a large organization, it's not going to be something that's
Right.
you know, frequent. It's going to be occasional, but when it's occasional, it's important. But I do think it would be a great idea for folks to have more information about, because what they're hearing, sometimes you get emails from people who are just getting a lot of misinformation, and then when you tell them or point them to the website or a link to the agenda or the packet, then they can see for themselves. So if we can get more of that out there, so folks are more conversant with, okay, this is what happens on a weekly basis. I can read about it before it happens, and then I can read what happened. But it has to be condensed and it has to be user-friendly because it's a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
And consistent.
Yeah.
Okay, any additional thoughts? It sounds like the consensus is that there's enough work here where it needs to go on to whoever this new deputy is that we've been talking about.
And I'll just say, you know, with that we're early, but when we get into budget committee week, you're going to see some proposals with personnel changes that we've been discussing, that you'll see that what it looks like in the budget. And so we'll be prepared to highlight where this would be addressed within the organization and within the budget as well. So I'll be prepared to highlight that when I present that to the board.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on that? Okay. All right, we will move to consent agenda. It looks like we have several minutes and a reappointment. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Great, motion passes. Thank you. All right, item H is old business. H1 is consideration of approval in the matter of an application for an outdoor mass gathering permit by the Newburgh Boat Club in joint sponsorship with the Columbia Outboard Racing Association for the applicant. Approving a special permit for use of Rogers Landing Park for the 2024 Memorial Weekend Boat Races, authorizing exclusive use of Rogers Landing Park by the applicant from 5 p.m. Friday, May 24th through 11:59 p.m. Sunday, May 26th. Authorizing access to Rogers Landing Park on May 18th and May 19th for pre-race cleanup work party. This was tentatively approved on March 21st of 2024. So it looks like the document has been updated per our discussion, reflecting the fee reduction to $250. And so you need a formal approval of the document.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this, at least to the chair previously. Actually, after last week's public hearing, the board didn't actually need to take any formal action at that time. So that was my mistake. But this is the document that needs to be approved. And then once this is approved, we'll get it back to the applicant so they can move on with their applications that need to go to the Marine Board. And then once we have the final documentation that we need, I'll issue, it's essentially an email authorizing them to move forward. And that's the final step in the permitting process. But yeah, this is the formal board order.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions?
None.
None.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying, oh, sorry, I'll move approval. Skipping forward. All right, Burschauer moves approval. Is there no further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank
Thank
you. Item I, other business. I1 is consideration to authorize Public Works to purchase a 2024 12-yard Freightliner dump truck. Whoops, that should say truck. From Premier Truck Group of Portland under the state government contract in the amount of $206,835.
I was just going to ask Commissioner Johnston if he could get it cheaper. You get us a deal.
that's actually a pretty good deal. I've been seeing used ones going for well over that. I know this one's not as big as some of them, but it's a pretty good deal. I just to put it into kind of a little bit of perspective, I just bought one a month ago for 95,000 and it had over 700,000 miles on it. And it was a 2006 model. So that's a pretty good deal.
Well, this one, I think we've been waiting, what, almost 2 years,
Yes.
year and a half for it?
Very
So,
long.
yeah.
Wow.
All right. Commissioner Johnston, do you want to move approval?
So moved.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
All opposed, same sign. Great. We have a dump truck. I2, consideration to authorize the Public Works Director to enter professional service contract negotiations with Design Workshop for a Parks Master Plan. And we have Mark and Travis here with us. I don't know, Kit, if you can see, but they are here to answer any questions. Commissioner Johnson, do you want to kind of kick this off in terms of the discussion that the Parks Board had?
Yeah, I haven't really perused all three of them, but the one main key that really stood out to me on the one that they chose was the focus on the lands that we already have for parks. And I think that's very important. The one thing that kind of bugs me is that we're going through all this whole process with our committee to pick it, and we don't even know what the price is. And we kind of discussed this last week, but that's kind of a hang up for me. But I understand that we have to choose, based on knowledge for parks master plans and not necessarily price. But if I understood Mark correct during the meeting, that the second phase of this, we will still be able to address the costs and change these, change the parameters of what we want from this master plan from this company out of Colorado. So if Mark wants to talk a little bit more about that, or Travis.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
No, obviously their experience is pretty wide ranging. They've
Yeah.
got an awful lot in their
A
on
lot
their
of counties.
a lot of folks that they've worked with, municipalities and counties in different areas. Again, it really does come down to being able to change the scope of work to address any kind of price, not so much the scope of work, but in other words, when we're dealing with the price, what can we add and what can we take away?
There is
Right.
certainly the option to negotiate, and that's built into this qualification-based selection process that's laid out in statute and rule that we're obliged to follow with agreements like this. There will be an opportunity to sort of fine tune the work, but what we wouldn't be able to do would be to make wholesale changes that would sort of upset the solicitation itself. So
Right.
there will be some opportunity to talk about the specific needs, how that's priced and how that's carried forward. And then if we don't come to terms with the top scoring proposer, then you move to the second person on the list and you sort of move on down the list. The idea being eventually you'll come to agree with one of the responsible proposers.
Which the frustrating part about that is that when you don't know a price, it drags this out even farther. And we've already been working on this for well over a year.
Yeah.
So, but it is what it is. And I think we owe kudos to Jody for, this is the second go around for RFP. And I think she went out and banged the drum a little bit louder and actually got 3 companies to do an RFP this go around.
She's very
Thank you.
proud. Yes.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that can be a challenge, and your points are well taken. Those are the frustrations that we would run into oftentimes with sort of the primary way in which we run into this is with architects and engineers, where it is QBS based. And so, but we have been able to successfully come to agreement in the second phase and usually end up with a final price that's within budget and within expectations. So hopefully that will be something that we can also achieve this go around.
And I think the good news about this is how well our Parks Board is situated. And I think Travis can back me up on this a little bit. They seem very enthusiastic. And when we get down to the expensive parts of this for the reach out and the advertising, where we got to do surveys with the public, I think our Parks Board is going to pick up a lot of this. And they seem to be, at least at the last meeting, very energetic and willing to do that. And that, I think, is going to save us quite a bit of money.
Great. So we approved, I can't remember what year that was, but $100,000 basically for the master plan work.
Yeah, the funding. Trying to remember if it was ONC or landfill license reserve, but the board did approve a request prior to opening the solicitation to have funds available to pay for this master plan
Yeah.
effort.
I think at the time we knew that it may cost more than that.
Yep.
But at least, we have something appropriated. I agree, Commissioner Johnson, and I like their approach of the take care of what we have first. It seems more practical. Hopefully the budget remains practical too, but yeah, this seems like a good start. So hopefully we can come to an agreement.
So budget-wise, we've already appropriated this, and I'm assuming that it'll be during this fiscal year that, and maybe not.
I'm, with the timing of it, with the notice of intent to award right now.
Wait, I'm going to interrupt. So this isn't a notice of intent.
Oh,
And Mark, Travis, you might have to come up and talk about this. And I'm sorry I missed this in the agenda. If you're still waiting to get costs from them, we're not at the notice of intent yet. And I just want to clarify that because the protest period doesn't start until we have officially issued a notice of intent. So I want to clarify that one on the record. I think, unless you've already gotten cost. Okay, they're shaking their head no. Okay, so we're not there yet. It's a little different than an ITB, which I think is what, Mark, you're used to bringing intents in front of the board. So I just wanted to clarify that. We're not there yet.
So do we have to vote to authorize then?
I think this is more of an update.
Okay.
Generally what the process is you will reach out to the highest scorer and you'll say, okay, now we'd like to get your cost. And you can actually reach out to the top three. So you could reach out to all three of them and get their cost proposals. And then you evaluate based on that. And then once you're satisfied that you've selected the contractor you want to go with, that's when you can bring your notice of intent to the board to give their blessing to.
So why did we already go through the process then of selecting from the three?
It's a,
So we just,
yeah, it's a two-phase process. That's why they call it a qualification based.
okay. all
Pick
right.
up based on
I just
qualification.
want to make sure we just didn't waste Parks Board time going
did
through, and now we got to go through it all
Done
over.
everything correct. I think we just are a little ahead of the game.
So if you would clarify, so basically the next step is we're getting costs from all of the three of the top three bidders?
Yeah, so you'll reach out to each of them and sometimes, I'm not sure what you asked for on your RFP. I can't remember. Sometimes we ask them to submit their cost proposal with their RFP, but sealed. I don't know if we did that. If we didn't do that, that's fine. We just reach out and say, please provide your hourly rates and your cost proposal. And then you'll gather that. And you can just ask for it from the top scorer right now and ask for the other two if negotiations fall apart, or you can ask for all three up front.
I'd ask for all three.
Leave it to government to complicate things.
Yep, boy, oh boy. So am I understanding that the other two were not considered qualified?
No.
I don't
No,
think that
it's
was.
not, it wasn't that, it was,
They must have, presumably this was the top scoring response
Okay.
based on the information we've got so far, which doesn't include
Price.
price.
Yeah.
This
Okay.
was the preference of the Parks Board, is my understanding.
Without any consideration of
Price.
cost. Now, we can actually factor that in before we before we approve this.
Right, and as Jody said, if we did it now, you're sort of saying, well, we intend to approve this before we know the cost.
Yeah.
Once we've negotiated, say it's with the top scorer and we reach a price, then you could do a notice of intent to award, and then the other two would have an opportunity to protest at that time.
Okay, but we're not asking for them to submit a price along with the top scorer?
We can ask them now.
The other two, you mean?
Yeah.
Mhm. You can ask up to 3,
Okay, so I think. we
and there's
could-
3, I think.
Sure.
So you can,
Save
but
some
that's up to you
time.
guys.
If they're close, then obviously we would go with the preference of the Parks Board. But if they're not even close, then we have to take a second look. No?
You start with the
Oh.
top,
Right.
and then if you don't reach agreement with the top, then you go to the second. And then if you don't reach agreement with, or come to a deal with the second, then you go to the third. So you would take it in order of the scores.
Right, okay.
okay, so I'm just gonna go back because so at this point, there's no action required by the board at this point, and so staff will go and get pricing and attempt to negotiate the agreement that then would come forward to the board.
Negotiate.
Your notice of intent.
Right.
So you're going to be negotiating a cost, and if you
Okay.
can come to an agreement with the top scorer
All
for
right.
phase 1, then you'll come back with the notice of intent at that time. And that's when it'll get approved and the protest period will start.
And I don't know about this RFP specifically, but generally there is a sample contract in there. This would also be the time to sort of finalize any additional contract changes. And then you reach agreement on price, any further remaining contract revisions, and then you bring that back and say, this is the one that we intend to award to.
Okay, so no action is required this morning, and we'll come back for the notice of intent.
Yeah, I don't think anything is required. If the board would like to act to authorize Parks Department and Public Works to enter into negotiations with the top scoring proposers, you could do that, but I don't believe anything else formal is required.
Can I ask a clarifying point? So let's say that this Design Works, is it called? Yeah, Design Workshop comes back with, it's going to cost us $200,000 to do this. The Parks Board doesn't have the authority to negotiate anything beyond $100,000 because that's all that's been appropriated. So what are they supposed to do?
So there's a budgetary piece of that. There's the procurement piece, which I'll touch on. Just hold on. The procurement piece, what they're going to do is they're going to give you hourly rates with a scope. And you're going to say, well, I'm going to cut this scope, cut this scope, cut this scope until you get down to amount that you can afford. The budget piece, I don't have an answer to that. Ken will answer that.
Well, often, I don't know if this was the case with this one. I don't know if there was a budget number included in the RFP either. Okay.
So, typically, because it's two different functions. One, there was a budgetary action that was taken where there was a request that was approved to help offset the cost for this project, but that didn't set an appropriation limit on actually doing the project. Because again, it's kind of a shot in the dark, especially for something like this. And so if they're going through the negotiations and the pricing is coming back at a certain level, they'll reach out to me, and then we'll figure out next steps about, one, is there other available funding within the parks budget, SDCs, or do we need to come before the board and make an additional request because it looks like the pricing for it is going to be a certain amount. So, I mean, there is limitations on what's been appropriated. but it doesn't necessarily limit their negotiations or ability to get that pricing. And so staff will just have to work on that and evaluate and, because this, I will say the other part with this being a Parks and Open Space Master Plan, this is actually when it gets through the whole process, it'll be subject to hearings. It'll be coming before the board eventually because this is a modification will be adopted to become part of the comprehensive plan. And so it's going to be an update to the current one that's part of the county's comprehensive plan. So it's a pretty extensive process to get from point A to point B to get this finally finished.
Question about the comprehensive plan. What materially changes from what we already have now? Because nothing changes in terms of the number of parks or the landmass, right?
Well, it's basically replacing that parks plan, the master plan that's already a part of the comprehensive plan, and it would be replaced with this new updated plan.
Okay. And then, thank you. And then Christian, to that question I had about being able to sort of take pieces out to fit our budget. And as Kit mentioned, Commissioner Johnston mentioned, we do have a fairly active Parks Board now that can do a lot of the outreach to the community. So if we take that away from what they would charge us for that, would that be something we couldn't do? Is that what you're saying? Did I misunderstand?
Do you know more? I don't know. I don't know the details of what was in the RFP or what was in the responses to know whether or not you could carve that public outreach piece effectively out or not.
Yeah, you can. It's a negotiation. So because this is a A&E contract, we're essentially saying we need a designer to do something. And then what we can afford is this. And so if we can't afford the whole shebang, we say, okay, well, show me how many hours you're going to spend on this. Okay, cut that back to 10 hours. Show me how many hours you plan on spending on this. Cut that back. And what will happen is we'll get less services, which will therefore, coincide with things like public meetings and stuff like that. But it's not like we're going into the scope and just saying, let's change all of this.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
that makes sense.
thank you.
McMinnville's going through this right now. I was wondering if Travis knows what their dollar figure was for their master plan.
I believe their initial budget was,
You want to come up?
sorry,
It's okay.
I believe their initial budget was 250,000.
Just
Did
for-
has that stayed true through their process? Because I know they're starting to wrap that up now, aren't they?
But I would also keep in mind the size and scope. It's not truly an apples to apples comparison when you're looking at McMinnville Park System because they also have recreational facilities. They have an aquatic center. They have a community center, a lot of recreational components that our park system does not have.
Okay.
Right. And as long as we kind of keep that perception there, when we get our price back, it kind of give us something to gauge by. That's the only reason I was asking. Otherwise, we have nothing to compare to right now.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Any further questions?
None.
Okay, well, please proceed with getting costs from all three. I'm sure that makes Commissioner Johnston very happy. That's what he wanted.
Thank you.
Okay. Item I3 is consideration of approval of an all-terrain vehicle or ATV grant agreement 24-07 between Yamhill County and the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department in the amount of $40,092.50 retroactive to March 15th, 2024 through June 30th of 2025.
I have a question about the match on that. Is that something that's was budgeted at some point? Was this budgeted, or is this something that is sort of new to the game, new to the equation?
I don't think it's new. I had the same question for the sheriff last night. I don't think he had a chance to respond. This is an ongoing grant, and this one actually is going to replace the four-wheeler that we have currently. The old one is a 2005, so it needs to be replaced. But I believe about $10,000 of this grant goes towards the equipment, and then 30,000 roughly goes towards the personnel, the reserves that are up there. enforcing the OHV laws.
And fuel.
And so, I did see in the grant that there's roughly a $10,000 match. I think it's split between a general fund allocation and the sheriff's budget. So it's been worked in. I just
Okay.
don't know if it's coming out of 23, 24, or if it's 24, 25.
Okay.
That was my question.
Okay.
Maybe
thank
Ken
you.
can answer that as he jumps back in here. Sorry to put you on the spot, but we're talking about I3, the Oregon Park and Rec, ATV grant. In the grant, it says there's roughly a $10,000 match for a total of 50,000. You want me to pull it up? I can pull it out here. I3. The question that I had, I don't know if it's the same as Commissioner Starrett, but the question I had was, is that funding? I have a note that it is a part of the $10,000 match is general fund and part of it's the sheriff's office budget. Where it says source of match.
I think it would all be the sheriff's office budget
Okay.
because they're, I'm looking through the handouts right now. Because there wasn't we don't have anything else earmarked or anything anywhere else in the budget. There wasn't an add back request or any type of request brought forward for additional funds to come in and match. So I would assume that the full amount is within the sheriff's office budget. They're using already appropriated revenues or to fund this.
So it's for 23, 24. So we've already appropriated this money.
It could be because the agreements March through June 30th of next year. So I believe a portion is probably appropriated for this current fiscal year, and then next fiscal year is probably covering the other part. So it's going to cross
Okay.
fiscal years.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I asked for clarification on which fiscal year, but I didn't get a response back quite in time.
I don't think it changes anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an ongoing agreement that we've had
Right.
for the Upper Nestucca area.
Because as most of it's probably going to cover the high usage point of the season, which is
Right.
going to be more of the summer months. So it makes sense. It's going to cross fiscal years.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm not sure on the year and stuff, but it does say general fund is 3,500 and vehicle replacement fund is 7,500 for the 10,000 total. Or that's actually 11,000.
Yeah, I think though that's when it says
Whatever.
fund, I think it's what we send to the sheriff's budget. So it's sort of all out of the sheriff's budget.
It's
It
not-
just says source of match. But.
Yeah.
Right.
And just to be clear, since there was a newspaper article that said this was Parks Department. As much as I'd like a four-wheeler for the Parks Department, it is not the Parks Department. I think they got confused that the funding's coming from the Oregon State Parks,
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
just to be clear.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? I don't know. Did somebody move approval? If not, I will move approval. And if there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Motion passes. I4, consideration of approval of amendment number 4 to agreement number 16-519 between Yamhill County and Project Able, Board Order 16-519, extending term agreements for technical assistance on peer delivered services in the amount of $363,603, retroactive to July 1st, 2023 through June 30th of 2025.
And Project Able provides training and technical assistance in Marion, Polk, and Yamhill County to peers to deliver the services to community members. These are folks with significant behavioral health issues, addressing them at the community level. So I would move approval.
Great, thank you. Any questions or discussion? No. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The motion passes. I5, consideration of approval of agreement number 44300-00026-179 between Yamhill County and the Oregon Health Authority for Parent-Child Interaction Therapy, PCIT, in the amount of $99,000.37, retroactive to January 1st of 2024 through June 30th of 2025. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, any discussion, questions? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item I6, consideration of approval of the 2023 through 2025 BOCA/CFA non-competitive grant agreement between Yamhill County District Attorney's Office and the Department of Justice to support the District Attorney Crime Victim Services Office. The total grant amount is $369,232, retroactive to October 1st of 2023 through September 30th of 2025. I will go ahead and move approval. Any further discussion?
None.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Motion passes. Commissioners, I do have an add-on today. We'll call it I7. The City of Lafayette, the mayor and the city manager are meeting with the CEO of PGE. I believe it's on April 10th, if I'm getting the date right. And they are, with the addition of the Lafayette City Council, have approved requests for letters from their constituents talking about how the PGE rate increases have impacted them as a household and a family. As you know, PGE raised rates by over 18% this year. There was an additional rate increase last year, and they've asked for almost 8% in increases for January of 2025. This is the first city that I've seen step up and want to actively advocate for ratepayers and their constituents directly to PGE. And so I did draft a letter. It should be in your inbox. But basically the intent of this letter would be to be coming from the board in support of the City of Lafayette's effort to address this with PGE, but also acknowledge that, and acknowledge that we have shared constituents, but also acknowledge that PGE is not in charge of statewide energy policy, and that this is going to require, if relief is going to come, it's going to require the cooperation of the governor and the Oregon legislature. And so since this came in very late as an add-on, I can read it. Commissioner, if you haven't had a chance to see it or open it.
Yeah, if you could read it, that'd be great. It won't open for me.
Okay.
And IT warned me to reset my password and I never did. So now I'm stuck. I can't.
You're stuck. Okay. Okay. So this would be a letter from the board to Mayor Malcolmson and the Lafayette City Council regarding the public input on PGE rate increases. Oh my gosh. Here we go. And it reads, Mayor Malcolmson, City Manager Dross, it has come to our attention that the City of Lafayette, at the behest of Mayor Malcolmson, City Manager Dross, and the Lafayette City Council, is engaging directly with PGE regarding rate increases on behalf of our shared constituents. We are not aware of other cities stepping up to advocate for ratepayers, and we are indebted to you for leading this effort. Please consider this letter as part of the package of testimony that you plan to deliver to PGE. The Yamhill County Board of Commissioners shares your deep concern about the impact that significant PGE rate increases have had on tens of thousands of residents that live here. PGE's rate increases over the past 10 years have been shocking, with a 57% increase in residential rates, 47% increase in commercial rates, and 28% increase in industrial rates from 2014 through 2024. Residential rates have increased by more than 30% just since 2022. With PGE requesting another 7.4% for 2025, this would push rates to more than 40% higher than they were in 2022. Ratepayers feel that they have no recourse and are relying on the Oregon Citizens Utility Board to reject proposed increases. Many of our residents are living on fixed incomes, and with food and gas costs rising with inflation, huge jumps in utility bills are simply unsustainable. There is very little transparency around why these drastic rate increases are necessary. In the spirit of transparency, we would be remiss if we didn't highlight some of the reasons why PGE is asking for constant rate increases. Extreme price volatility was predicted when the Oregon legislature passed the Renewable Portfolio Standards and banned coal in 2016 and natural gas in 2021. There was no clear plan to replace baseload power with renewable energy sources. In fact, wind and solar generation only produce power about 30% of the time. In order to avoid rolling blackouts, Oregon has had to rely on purchasing baseload power from other states. Unless Oregon prioritizes investment in carbon neutral baseload power sources like nuclear energy, we will continue to have to rely on fossil fuel sources from other states. Moving entirely to wind and solar power generation will never work, as the grid needs reliable, non-intermittent power sources. The state of California is learning this the hard way, as they've been forced to extend the lifespan of numerous natural gas plants in order to avoid devastating blackouts. Legislating that Oregon's greenhouse gas emissions must be zero by 2040 is creating a forced push by PGE to invest in wind and solar renewable infrastructure. Yet as of 2021, over 84% of Oregon's energy was still produced by hydro, coal, and natural gas coming in from other states. The carbon neutral goals of the Oregon legislature are illogical and impossible in the proposed timeframe, and there is no plan for maintaining necessary baseload power. PGE knew this when they closed the Boardman coal plant. We acknowledge that PGE is responding to the demands of a state legislature that has an unrealistic expectation of energy goals in the future. Politicians promised that their emissions-free laws would not saddle ratepayers. Clearly, that was false. However, PGE does have a moral obligation to be honest about what is necessary to meet renewable energy standards and what it will cost ratepayers in the short and long term. We stand ready to assist PGE in advocating for common sense energy policies that don't force seniors on fixed incomes to choose between grocery money or unsafe temperatures inside their homes during freezing weather. It's time Governor Kotek and the Oregon legislature step up to protect ratepayers as well. Thank you for standing up for our families. This is meant to be sent to the city council and the mayor so that they can then go advocate in their meeting directly with the CEO of PGE on April 10th.
I like it.
And if approved, it would be signed by all three of us.
Chair, I want to, first of all, thank you for putting some light on the reason why the rate increases are. I think people are looking at that and blaming PGE. Years ago, when the legislature proposed this, there were red flags and warnings, and we tried to say, don't do this. These mandates will do nothing but hurt, everybody, but folks who are on fixed incomes and lower income are really going to feel this, and it has been significant. The one thing I will say is that when we look at, for instance, shutting down coal plants, as we do in this country and we've done in this state recently with Boardman, where in China, they're building them at a rate of, 1 a week. So while other countries are building them, we're shutting them down, we're hamstringing ourselves, and we're causing the price of energy to rise. And it is unsustainable and unrealistic to think that wind and solar is going to be able to meet our needs. And it's clearly not going to happen. So blaming PGE without realizing they had a gun to their heads. They had no choice.
Mhm.
So I think our legislators need to hear this, and I think our governor needs to hear this. The same thing with the electric vehicles and gas powered vehicles, and the mandates there are essentially going to do the same thing, and then further overload an overloaded electric grid. So we're facing some serious concerns in terms of energy capacity, and this is not going to help. So I hope they realize it's not PGE that they need to go after.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was pretty shocking to read about what California has had to do in order to prevent massive statewide blackouts. The way that energy works is, electricity works is it has to be constant and balanced all of the time. You can't have more demand and not enough supply. There has to be an equilibrium all the time. So they've had to renew these natural gas plants just to maintain that equilibrium. So I guess my concern is that, first of all, as you said, the fire is directed at PGE right now. I think it needs to be directed at the governor and the legislature, and they need to step in and do something about this. Commissioner, any questions? Mr. Johnson?
None. Sounds good to me.
Okay. Okay. So I would move approval of the letter that I just read to the mayor of Lafayette and the city council. And again, I want to just thank them for recognizing that, we need to start stepping up and advocating more forcefully for families, because some people experienced hundreds of dollars in increase in the month of January, hundreds of dollars.
I'm one of them,
Yeah.
but I'm thinking of the person on Social Security who's living alone and, as you said, can't make it pencil out.
Right. Okay, so I move approval, and then we will stick that on our letterhead and get it out. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Motion passes. Okay, we have a couple public hearings. Is it meant to be two, right? It's one for, okay. One for the collection and one for disposal. That's right. Okay. Okay, so J1 is a proposal for a solid waste collection franchise renewal by Waste Management. Consideration of approval of a solid waste collection franchise amendment between Yamaha County and Waste Management of Oregon, extending the agreement through January of 2034. So I will go ahead and open the hearing. You guys, if there's anyone who wants to come forward. Ashley. And it's my understanding we do this every 10 years, right? It's a 10-year contract.
I believe the term is every 10 years, although we're early on this one.
Okay.
I'm looking at Ashley on that, though.
In the past, they've come back early to try and maintain like a 10-year window. You may be able to
Okay.
speak more to that, but I don't know where, otherwise we were how many years away? In the past, it's been like 5 to 7 years away, and then you come back and ask for an extension, so you've got kind of a rolling 10 years for planning purposes and et cetera.
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, commissioners, do you have any questions on the amendment?
None. I know that we go through this on a regular basis, and we have come in early just to sort of get ahead of it. It's not required to come in early. It's just that it's just a decision that's been made.
Yeah, we came in a little bit early on this one, knowing that there was gonna be I think there was some minor language change between the county and the company. That went back and forth for a while, so we're probably a little bit early on this one.
Okay. Are we, was that an issue or?
So
I'm not-
actually,
I'm
you
not
might have
aware.
to come up and talk about where
Okay.
these amendments came from. 'cause
We're
I-
not aware of any back and forth, so I'll make sure.
It's very often. So the last time Waste Management came before the board was in 2014. And so the current contract expires in December of 2024. And they brought it before us back in May of 2023. And we had some back and forth about the language of the actual franchise agreement because it hadn't been updated since 1993.
Okay.
So we had some amendments that we finally all agreed upon, and SWAC went ahead and then approved the renewal based on that
Okay.
language being amended. So
Okay. Okay, and this is not related to rates. It is related. I didn't see any of that in there.
no, this
It's
is just stating that
just
they
the
are a
contract.
franchise.
Okay, got it.
For that area.
All right. Any questions regarding we're looking at the collection franchise first.
Which one is this? The, Collection?
Um, Yes, collection is first.
did we add the emergency language to both of them? Or just the collection one?
We can for both of them. We didn't.
Which one did we put it in?
I don't think I put it in either one.
Not
I
in-
think it's,
Is it there?
it's in the hall.
Oh, the emergency language as far as the amendment.
Yes.
Yes, that's in both of
Yes.
them. Sorry.
That's in both. Okay, so just one clarification. Mostly the amendments included like tweaks to language so that it matched the solid waste ordinance. Since it's been, what, 15, 20 years, I guess, since it was last amended. We just needed to do some logistical changes, but one big one is we now have the ability to ask Waste Management to help out when we have emergencies and we need to clear debris. Now, they don't necessarily have to say yes. They have some options for disengaging from that, but for the most part, they can help us with, I'm thinking of the fires in 2020. When I believe there were tree lumber debris on the roads, things like that. So that is something that was added to the contracts that they're now able to provide us with. So that was, I think, the only thing of substance that was added, to my knowledge.
Yeah, that was based on a webinar I saw after the fires of 2020 that one of the other franchises had like, make sure you read your contract. And so I was like, oh, this might be something we need to add to our contracts, that we update them.
Okay, so we're taking public testimony?
Correct. I
Okay.
want to make sure we get back into the process, so. Well, we opened a public hearing, so we need to make sure we afford anybody opportunity to give public comment should they choose to. And we have to make sure we call for that, counselor.
Okay, I will be calling for public testimony now on the item 1A, which is the collection franchise agreement. And if you are online, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, hearing none. Do we have to come out of public hearing for each one and vote?
I think you're only in the first one. So yeah, you'd have
Got
to
it.
close the first
Close
one
it,
and then
okay.
open the second one.
Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing. Any discussion or questions from commissioners?
No.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Item J2 is a proposal for solid waste transfer station franchise renewal by Waste Management, consideration of approval of a solid waste disposal franchise amendment between Yamaha County and Waste Management of Oregon, extending the agreement through January of 2034. And I will go ahead and open the hearing. Anything to present that was changed with this particular one?
I think the same applies.
Okay.
I don't know what the expiration date was. Was it also?
Yeah, it was also December of 2024.
Okay.
Okay.
Same emergency language was added and the rest of the amendments are essentially cleanup.
Okay, so I will call for public testimony on item 2A. And hearing none. We will go ahead and close the hearing. Commissioners, any concerns, questions on this one? All right, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes. Thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, and that brings us to our last item, which is announcements. Commissioners, any announcements?
The sheriff's office memorial in front of Evergreen tomorrow,
Tomorrow, I need to look.
1 o'clock.
Around 1 o'clock, yes, at Evergreen. Yes. But I believe the sheriff's office will be escorting
Mhm.
from a different part of the county, so
Right.
yes.
And also tomorrow we commemorate Good Friday and the darkness of Good Friday, but a lot can happen in 3 days. So we hope that we can recognize God's goodness on our county as we celebrate Easter on Sunday.
Thank you. I only have a couple. I just wanted to acknowledge the Yamhill County Gospel Rescue Mission. We made a trip out there after the meeting last week and brought some supplies out there that they needed, but it looks like their shelter is coming along. The kitchen's totally built out, and Chef Terry is very excited about his new kitchen. But I believe the shelter opens on the 1st, so kudos to them. That's been a long time coming that they've been working on that, so.
Yep.
Commissioner Johnston, any announcements?
Applications closed for Fair Ambassador. We ended up with 7, so not as good as I think 12 last year. And I think interviews will start in April. That's all I got.
Sounds good. Quick follow-up. We had a Measure 110 House Bill 4002 follow-up meeting yesterday with DA Bradbury and Kate Lynch, our deputy DA, as well as Director Mann from HHS, and then Sheriff's Office, as well as chiefs of police from other parts of the county, continuing the discussion on how we implement changes from House Bill 4004 and potentially stand up a deflection program in the county. We are getting a little bit closer to having consensus on how that might work for everybody. And so we have a follow-up meeting in a couple weeks to actually review what I would call a flow chart in terms of, if this happens, then this can occur, and how that looks for all of our different entities that are coming together to do this between law enforcement and HHS and the DA's office. So I should have more concrete solutions to propose after, or to talk about after that meeting.
And along those lines, yesterday, the local alcohol and drug policy committee met, and it has a lot of the same players joining. Diane Reynolds from Provoking Hope, our DA, and a lot of partners around the community talking about where we're falling short in terms of prevention and addiction treatment. And I think the consensus is that we really don't have a place for people to land who are seeking recovery. And that's what I think this policy committee is going to be very instrumental in addressing some of the issues around 4002.
Great. There's definitely a gap in service there. Okay, anything else? Anything for the good of the order before we adjourn? Okay, I will adjourn the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal session for March 28th, 2024. It is 11:09. Thank
See you
you.
guys later.
Bye, Kit.
Safe travels.
Bye, Kit.